Hello, it is me, Orrick brother of Red Duwana. Only I am the one that is older and have red hair. Today, we are listening to something called an interlude. That's something that can often happen in a book, or even in a really long play, like in theater, or a musical. It is sort of in between space and a story. I mean, that's what it is. The interlude, that is. Where you can experience other interesting things with the characters that are kind of going on within the main plot, and it can complement the main plot or be completely removed from it. Like when a group of adventurers go and get shawarma after a big fight. Shawarma. Anyway, today I will be doing an interlude for the King's Road. Maybe the rest of the pack will have one of their own interludes. Maybe they won't. I don't know. I can't control that. I am a change bringer, not a schedule maker. So anyways, this is where it's gonna go. So, shh. My interlude is about to begin. One day, I found myself with a little time to read on my own, and I wanted to read about the War of Endless Summer. Ooh, I like this one.
All right. For this, act as if you have had a long rest. You're at your full capabilities. You have found yourself a little bit of time to maybe slip away from the rest of the party and read. This is prior to the Harvest Festival, but Orrick, I will let you kind of paint the scene here of where you are, what time of day it is, like how this goes down.
Okay. I am sleeping in the library when we are all locked into the library. Only I cannot sleep, and I get up and I light a small candle and a bed sheet, and I put it over me so that I can read under the bed sheet, but with the small candle light. Enough so that it doesn't catch anything on fire. And hopefully, I will still get enough sleep and not drool everywhere, and then maybe wet myself when I wake up.
So sometime after all the events of that night, after all the hubbub, still unable to find yourself able to go to sleep, understandably in that circumstance, you say you grab a book,
Yes.
and it is the one that is about the War of the Endless Summer. And as you start to open it, you find yourself kind of like skimming through the table of contents, kind of flip through the pages, see if there's any pictures. There's not a lot of pictures.
I like the pictures.
There's some, but there's not a lot. Notably, you see one that appears to be some sort of city surrounded by a large, almost crafted from vines looking wall. The architecture seems a lot different than what you're used to. It seems like for as much as Dunwood has made itself try to look fancy with all of its golden decorations, this place kind of gives off an impression of fancy to you, but in a way that seems more natural, less forced. Not as much as Dunwood, where it is obvious that they have sort of compensated
This is
for...
the picture I come across?
Yes.
Ooh, is there like a description of what this place is?
Yeah, you see it is written as this is the castle of the lands of Riocht, which is an elven area of land in the sort of upper corner of the downlands.
The lands of Renock.
Riocht.
Rioch.
Yep.
Sometimes I need to spell it out.
Yes. Riocht.
Rioch. Now I need to use it 5 times in the future so that I do not forget it.
You look at that for a while, and you kind of skim back to the table of contents. What are you looking for?
Well, ever since I had that one dream, you know, the one where my party were all like undead and trying to hurt me, that was not a good dream. I would put that in the worst scenarios of dreams that could possibly happen during my slumber. But in that dream, there was that monument that we came across where we found the sword. I'm curious, a place must be so important enough to put a monument there. I would like to learn whatever I can about this place and what this war and battle were about.
So as you sort of, and this dream having been only just a mere maybe hour before, still fresh in your mind, you kind of look through some various areas where you think that you might be able to find something about this place, and it just seems for a while that the pages just kind of go on, and you kind of take in information half-heartedly as it kind of is not what you want, so you're kind of just like letting it come in and flow throughout you, and then sort of as you have had experienced a few times previously now, you kind of feel yourself kind of not necessarily doze off, but you kind of lose your focus for a moment. And as you kind of regain your focus, you find yourself in a sort of familiar liminal all white space. Brightness kind of envelops you, and for a moment you can't really see anything around you until maybe 20 feet away you see a set of chairs and a red-haired, elven-looking woman who you know as Rainier, sitting in a chair, patiently waiting for you to sit down.
Orrick approaches Rainier, does a bow, and then sits into the chair next to Rainier, or in front of Rainier.
Greetings, Changebringer. I see you've buried your nose in a book again.
Yes, I like this feeling of reading. I wonder if Penn experiences it like this.
I'm not one for gambling, but I have a pretty strong feeling that perhaps you are the only one who experiences reading in this way, Orrick Duana.
Wow, I truly enjoy reading. Books are great.
That they are. Still, you seem to have a hard time staying awake as you read them.
Yes. I could just get so focused into them and then, well, I lose my train of thought. Does that come with being a changebringer?
It's not unusual. Often those who are the most innovative often struggle with processing things in the same way, if we're being honest. Perhaps that's what makes them unique. I think what you're struggling with, Orrick Duana, is an eagerness and yet a lack of training.
Well, I do my calisthenics off-screen all the time. And I practice my brain muscles by reading as much as I can.
Yes, that you do. But it is still very tiring for you, is it not? That's why you keep drifting off. Perhaps if I helped you. Perhaps if we approach things in a different way.
I am okay with all of the help I can possibly get, especially from you, Rainier.
All right. Well, I will say this. And she kind of pulls out something that you saw in your vision in the pond, and from one pocket she pulls out a red pen, and from her side she pulls a blue sword that's sheathed, and instantly, where there wasn't just mere moments before, there's like a little round top table in between the two of you, and she sets it on top of the table, and she says, Changebringer, I cannot make choices for you. I cannot give you every answer you seek as if it were on a platter. Fortunately, that is not how my magic works. However, I can give you the tools to explore yourself, make your own discoveries.
Are these the tools that will help me with that?
Yes, as they have every changebringer before. They represent order. She gestures to the red pen. Chaos. She gestures to the blue-looking saber.
I see. So they each have a significant meaning behind of them.
Yes, in that they are the very nature of reality.
I see. And I can only pick one of them?
To be clear, you need both. Both have their uses. It's just when you have two options, two sides of the scale, as balanced as you may try to keep them, your own biases may tend you to lean towards one or the other. Neither is necessarily wrong, Changebringer, and change isn't right or wrong, necessarily.
I see. Though I do prefer order in my life so that I know what to expect. Routine is key to a healthy lifestyle. But if I know all about that myself, or at least have good practice, perhaps I need to do a better job at embracing the chaos in life.
Certainly, if you feel an inclination to explore that side of yourself, that's always wanted. Now, what was it you were looking for again?
Well, I was trying to learn more about the War of the Endless Summer.
All right. What about it?
Well, I had a dream where I saw the name Carnival written into a monument that was put up after that battle. So I was curious about who the players were in that War of Endless Summer, particularly that giant battle.
All right. Well, choose your weapon change, Brenner. The pen or the sword.
Oh man. Okay. Ooh. I think.
There are no wrong answers.
Yeah, I know. It's just everybody's got choices.
Mhm.
Okay. I am going to. Orc sits there for a moment, contemplating what he just said about maybe needing more help embracing chaos. But the pen is just so cool and red. I think in this moment, he's going to try and impress Rainier and go with trying to literally wield chaos by grabbing the sword.
All right. She's holding one kind of extended, the pen in her palm, like so you could grab it out of her hand. The other, she's kind of got the sheathed end of it with the handle kind of pointed towards you. And as you grab onto the handle and feel your hands wrap around it for a moment, do you proceed? Pull it away.
Oh. As Orc kind of has its hand around the sword, he looks over to the hand holding the pen and just doesn't have enough character growth to go with the sword and leans over and grabs the pen.
An interesting choice. You almost had me there for a moment. No matter. They are both great decisions. And then she goes, one moment, please. And she goes over, and suddenly behind her chair, like 5 feet away, there is a bookshelf. And she's suddenly just like rummaging through all these like spines that have no writing on the outside until she finds one that's kind of got like the zebra stripe on the outside, and she pulls it out. And it's just like a book that's got a black and white kind of like diagonal stripes across the front and back of it, and she kind of hands it to you and flips it open, and then kind of sits there, puts her hands underneath her chin, and just kind of stares at you.
So I have this book now, and I have this pen.
Mm-hmm.
Is the book open?
The book is open.
What page is it on to? Is it?
The pages are blank.
Do I write my questions in here?
As I said, Changebringer, your discoveries are for you to make.
I think Oric's going to sign his name in the book.
It sinks into the book, and there's a few moments where it appears nothing else will happen. But eventually, 2 different sets of writing on 2 opposite corners of the page bubble up, each saying the words hello. In the top left, starchy looking writing, very, very, it's flowy and yet rigid at the same time, if that makes sense. It's cursive-y looking, and it's certainly good penmanship, but in the way that it's clearly been obsessed over and molded into this font. And it just says simply hello, and the E's got one of those like little swooshes that goes up into the L's, and the O's got a little trail at the end of it, and then a period. And then at the bottom, in almost triangular block writing, in the bottom right is another one that just says hello, period.
2 completely different.
They're both completely different styles of writing. One is like sort of like the one I just described when I try to like rephrase how I said that. It's kind of like old movies where it's Rome, but the writing's in English. Like that kind of style of font.
Okay. Hello to both of you.
Are you saying this out loud?
Yes.
Your voice kind of just hangs there in the air as they both kind of just continue to almost ripple in their respective corners.
I will write between them.
As you kind of start to lower your pen, you hear like a sort of like a clicking, and then like someone that's like trying to decide whether they should say something, And then you hear Rainier say, I should tell you, before whatever happens, that you are not bound to finish anything you start. When you wish to end, merely say the words Fine, and you shall come back. You cannot die the first time.
Okay.
The first time. And you can always come back and change your tool. The rest is up to you.
I see.
I go to touch the top, the cursive writing.
Okay.
Does anything happen?
Yeah, as you sort of put your pen, is that what you're doing? You're like kind of tapping it with your pen?
Mm-hmm.
As you kind of put your pen to it, it kind of like starts to take on your pen as though you were putting something into a liquid. And you feel as though if you choose to keep pressing, that you might be able to go through 2.
I'll go in.
All right. You kind of push through, and it's as if you're kind of entering like an ice bucket of water as you kind of feel yourself plunging through. And eventually you find yourself in another sort of blank space. It's not quite as white as before. It's kind of like an eggshell white area. And in front of you, in sort of 2D ink splotches, you know the show Owl House, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember the collector?
Yes.
The shadowy kind of character?
Uh-huh.
Kind of like that sort of image of what appears to be a rather upright looking woman with a pointy nose. And give me a perception or insight check as you sort of adjust to this sort of.
Okay. I will do insight. And that is a 19 for 23.
What is kind of, it's kind of like an obscure, like you could tell it's like a human in front of you, a human looking person, eventually starts to take on more fine features while still sort of remaining in this like two-animated space. And you start to realize that you too feel flattened, no longer 3D. You feel as like you have everything about you still at your disposal, but you are now, it's like you're on a page.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
paper Orrick.
And as you look, you study a very familiar face kind of start to define itself as you find yourself looking at an inky version of Randolph.
Whoa. That's who's in front of me?
Mm-hmm.
Randolph?
You look familiar.
It's me, Orrick Duwana.
Orrick, you see for a second there's like a pause where it's like calculating, like she's like trying to figure out what that is, and then suddenly there's like a slight dawn of recognition, and she goes, "Oh well, this is very peculiar. Well, this is quite odd indeed."
Yes. We are in platformer mode.
I'm not entirely sure what you'll mean, but if my... And you see her kind of like moving her hand around for a moment. It's like she's like waiting for... If my intuition is correct, are we in a book?
Yes, we are.
Oh. So you're reading my writings?
That's your handwriting. I really like the way that your E's connect with your L's.
Oh, thank you. Most people that have commented on my writing tell me that I need to get out more.
Oh no, it's wonderful. I think younger generations might not understand it, but I appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah, I get a lot of feedback from people that it's very harsh to look at.
Well, I find it exquisite.
Thank you, Orrick. All right, well, if I'm being honest, I don't know if I'm truly here right now. But whatever this is, I'm happy to help.
That's excellent news. It's like I'm reading your writing, but getting a first-hand experience with you.
Sure, yes. I was one of... Well, which one did you pick up?
Oh,
Do I still have it with me?
Yeah, you kind of like can pull it out in like it'll be in its 2D shadow form.
Yeah. I pull out the flat 2D pen.
Okay. you pull out the pen and you kind of wave it around. She goes, is that what brought you in the book? Is it some sort of wand or something?
Yes, it is in fact a pen.
Oh, I see.
A pen of order.
Okay.
And Orrick kind of makes that silly, like, I'm proud of myself, scrunchy face.
Yeah, you give me an insight check.
19.
You know this face that she's making, and it's one of those where she's not sure what you're talking about, and she's trying to figure out if it's like something that's like she should figure out, or if it's something that's kind of just like a silly Orrickism.
Column A, column B.
Yeah.
You were referring to the two items that I had to pick between, correct?
I'm sorry, what?
You asked me which one did I pick.
No, which book of mine did you pick up? I don't know what two items. What are you talking about?
I see what you're talking about now. Oh, never mind me. Communication is key, and when miscommunication happens, it's good to thoroughly talk out the explanation of the situation so that we can be back on the same page. Hey, Randolph, did you see what I did there? We're on the same page.
See, that literary form of you is just the same as regular you.
Orrick makes the proud of himself face again.
I picked The War of Endless Summer.
With that 23, you kind of see her face drop a little bit before she sort of regains it and says, "Oh, yes, well, I mean, I lived through it, so of course, I'm sure I could."
Were you there, Randolph?
Oh, I was a lot of places. I spent some part of the war here, certainly. I won't say that I was in the Downlands for the entire time.
So you know what happened.
What is it you wish to know, Orrick?
Orrick takes a moment after being somewhat silly during the situation to just kind of straighten out his thoughts.
I want to know what led up to this battle. Why did the war happen?
Do you want to know what led up to this battle, or do you want to know the lead up to the war? Because those are, while related, sort of different things.
I guess the beginnings of the war, because that will eventually explain the battle.
All right, then.
If I read the book in chronological order.
Certainly. Well, what I can tell you is that I don't necessarily contribute all of it. There's another person who recorded a lot of the writings, and then there's a few others that contributed fewer pieces, but it's sort of a collective work that's came about. In fact, we're lucky that we even got one part of it at all. You haven't spoken to the other guy, have you?
No, I was unaware of another guy until now.
I see.
Does he have kind of like square-like handwriting?
There's like a pause. And she goes, "So you did see him?"
I did. I mean, I saw his writing.
You didn't. She's kind of just like staring at you. You didn't go.
I did not engage. I was...
Perhaps that's for the best.
I think this is the time where your handwriting really came into play.
Well, let's count our blessings for that then. All right. Perhaps. Yeah. Wield that thing a bit for me. Why don't you? Why don't you draw? Can you draw?
I can certainly try.
Draw me what you think a door looks like.
Okay. Can I roll performance for this?
Sure.
Okay. Here we go. All right, that is a 3 for 6.
3 for 6. Okay, tell me how. Describe what the 6 drawing looks like.
Okay, I think it's a rectangle standing up vertically, but like maybe the top half is just like one side of the line is a little bit longer than the left one or the other one, so that when I connect the top bar, it's a little slanted, like upward. And then like the doorknob is just like a poorly drawn circle. And that's really all the detail that's really there.
She kind of like walks over to it and like grabs your wrist that's holding the pen and kind of like gently leads it towards where I guess there should be a keyhole and sort of like stabs your pen in that general area, and you hear like a sudden like thunking noise and as like the ink kind of like opens in upon itself, and now you find yourself as like all of the scenery around you sort of changes, it dissipates and rearranges, and you find yourself in what appears to be some sort of grand room. You can hear the sound of like a crying baby sort of in the background coming through the walls, and you see what looks to be a elven king sitting upon a throne, and at his side is like a bunch of his court and advisors, and then kind of below him is this ash fallen woman who's kind of like half bowed towards him but like gazing up at him, and she's like sort of like mumbling, and you're watching as his eyes sort of grow bigger and bigger, and you see like what is, give me insight actually.
Okay. Alright, that's 16.
You can see his face kind of starts from amusement at first to sort of concern, and then at some point his demeanor changes into sort of a fit of anger. And at this moment you kind of hear from over to your right, you hear Randolph say to you, the year was 392. Baelor, the king of Riocht, has just had a daughter, and he has just received a prophecy, in a way, about his firstborn. He had summoned this sort of mystic to give him a prophecy about his second child, who had just been born. But instead, he received a prophecy about his daughter Ifne, who was about 9 at this time, which is still very, very young for an elf. And what the mystic told him was that should she bear a son, the son would grow up to not only take Baelor's throne, but bring about the downfall of elven society in the Downlands as he knew it. What do you make of prophecy, Orrick Duana?
Well, I don't know. I don't believe I've ever experienced a prophecy, or at least if I have, I do not remember. But I don't know. Based on the experience of how I can communicate with time, it seems like events just happen. I don't know if they happen for a purpose or not, so I guess I will have to sustain my answer until I learn more about prophecy.
Well, that's very measured of you, Orrick. Fortunately, not everyone shares that restraint. Baelor did not forget about this day. And then kind of like everything sort of like starts to fade away until suddenly you find yourself in a sort of two-dimensional bog. 2 years later, 394 PC, Baelor journeys to the Palterlands, seeking someone who goes by the name of Mother. He and his men encounter many trials along the ways, and there's like animations of strange creatures that these elves are fighting and essentially mowing their way through. There's other periods where they kind of slowly just like diminish as you see the wear and tear that just even making this journey has on Baelor's guard, and as he eventually comes upon a house, you can see that it's just a cabin. And as he starts to approach, you watch as the house slowly rises from the ground as two sort of avian-like legs
Whoa.
come from out underneath it. and you watch as the house walks up to Baylor and then resettles itself down until he is right at its door, and the door opens. And you see in the window a sort of figure of like what appears to be at first the shape of a woman, and this is like through drapes, so it's like shadowy. Kind of change and grow as he walks through the door at the other end of the house. And Randolph says, "It is not certain exactly what was agreed upon on that day, but not long after, the royal princess, heir to the throne, could no longer be found in the capital of Riocht. And suddenly a great tower was constructed rather rapidly, a small island just off the coast.
Did he put his daughter there?
I only know parts of this tale, but my sources are true and I trust them to be. It is exactly what he did. It is said that some sort of curse was put upon that tower and on that island. A tower that said no man could enter, with an outer wall that no man could penetrate. And there it stood for many years. And then there's kind of another fade away. And then you find yourself suddenly in someplace underground. Some sort of cavernous place. You hear like the distant echoes of mining work being done. And suddenly Randolph is again by your side and she goes, "This is Hallow Tree. The year is 406 PC. And suddenly you see that you're in this room where there is a young woman who appears to be sort of pacing back and forth, back and forth. She doesn't notice you were Randolph, and Randolph starts to say, "The year is 406. Norman
Rookwood and her father
are visiting Hallow Tree on what is supposed to be the first official meeting of an arranged marriage." And as she says this, the door kind of opens, and there's like one person that kind of like walks in and like starts whispering in her ear, and you see this woman starts like shrieking, and then suddenly two other guards in different kind of garb walk in, and you see one kind of fling her arm towards both of them, and two sort of like spike-like objects fly and pierce both of them in the throat and pierce them to the wall. Things did not go as planned. Norman was the only one to make it alive out of Hallow Tree, and soon she would assume the throne. And it should be noted, not long afterwards, they had a sort of arcane awakening in Dunwood that has never really been fully explained. And there's like a shift and a change, and she goes, "The year's 416, and a fool from Foolsport has made certain friends that might help him in something no one else has been able to do. This fool's name is Cian, and he has heard tale of the elven maiden locked in a tower off the coast of Riocht. As I said, Cian is a man who has friends in many different places, and he comes up with a trick to send a shape-shifting friend of his as a form of a bird to the tower and deliver a message to the maiden there, and over the course of many months, he exchanges letters with the Princess of Riocht. Till one night, in the dead of winter, in the middle of a blizzard, a plan is hatched, and the princess escapes her tower." There's like a shift again. You find yourself once again in the palace room of Riocht, and there's a raging king who is throwing things around and is like hammering his fists on a table that is surrounded by all of his knights. Suddenly, Randolph is once again over your shoulder, and she says, "This does not please King Baylor, and again, not one to let things lie. He would begin to plot his next move." And then there's like a quick rapid change, and you're back in the Palterlands. Again, you see an army of like elves that are like fighting their way to get to this cabin. It was 1419, and King Baylor is unaware that he has a grandson, but he is aware of its coming threat. He goes once again to the Palterlands, strikes another deal. I do not know what he gave up, but he wished for an army to rival all others. That is what starts the war. He rallies his elven kind around him under the guise of human treachery, declares open warfare against those who would see his people suffer. Many years later, when the war has not gone his way, he returns to the Palterlands for a third time. It is said that he was transformed that day. I cannot say for sure. I only caught glimpses of him after that. But suffice it to say, with his army threatening, he starts to march south. What he doesn't account for was the loss of his greatest general. Gildrath is an ambitious elf. And suddenly you see the Ashfallen Mountains on the page.
Mm-hmm.
Gildrath had heard rumor of a tunnel that would lead to something strange, some sort of power that not even Mother would match. Wishing to strike his own brilliant name on the annals of history, he led his army there. Shortly after, it is said that he fell into madness. He lost all of his men, and suddenly Baelor finds himself in the Palterlands asking for another army, another weapon. He cannot be granted another army, though he can be granted power himself, so a desperate Baelor then reaches out to sympathetic human ears. He reaches alliances with Greystar and Hallowtree. Seeing that his righteous vengeance is but a ruse, many elves defect. And, well, the massacre in the Misty Valley is sort of what came from that.
So it wasn't much of a battle and more of a massacre.
So there's like a shift. And suddenly you're in a familiar looking valley, although the textures are all different. They're more inky, they're more shadowy, and yet unmistakably the same as that you've walked through, only the mist seems different here. Make a Constitution saving throw.
Ooh. Okay. Oh no. That's a 5 total. I rolled a 2.
Orrick, as you get here, you start to feel warm ink start to run from your eyes, your ears, and you feel churning in your stomach, an uncomfortable, gross nausea, and you feel it bubbling up, and you start to bend over and retch, and as you do, you hear a sudden pop, and then you look up, you now have this sort of like bubble around your head, as does Randolph. And she says, "Sorry about that, dear. I didn't know if the rules would be the same here." And I guess is this a memory? I don't know. It's different than one.
The paper verse.
Regardless, my apologies. I should have done this before we came here. My bad. As you look around, you just see sort of like bodies just strewn everywhere in this valley. There's a loud sobbing that you can hear up over a hillside. It seems like it's echoing in from that direction. And she goes, "I unfortunately was elsewhere when this battle began. I hurried as fast as I could, but perpetually late. It's my curse." She kind of looks around, just one step behind. And she starts to start doing this strange movement with her hand. Of course, I was unable to do this all by myself. I needed help from others. There's strong, foul magic on these lands that couldn't be cleansed just by myself. In fact, it couldn't be cleansed by anybody permanently. That's why the valley remains foggy to this day. We're able to put up certain wards on it to lessen it, but that ground there is corrupted.
So that monument that's there, it's more of a memorial.
Precisely. And you guys are kind of walking further, and the sobbing sounds you can hear getting kind of louder and louder, but you're still just quite a ways away as you're kind of approaching this hill, and you're not sure where she's taking you, but you're following. And she goes, "It was a mess. Forces from Hallowtree had sailed along the coast. Winchester was more... They claimed neutrality, but they were only interested in where they could make the most coin. And they did not raise an alarm as the Hallowtree ships hugged the coast, eventually popping up in Last Oak, going north. Greystar, of course. Dunwood was already being forced out from forces coming from the Palterlands. Pushed them south, and there was a convergence as many different troops and allies on both sides converged. It was the worst kept secret in the world. Everyone was alerted, and war is a very slow thing. They took their time, and on the day it was meant to be fought, another fool hatched their own plan, but unfortunately they were deceived." And as you kind of like round the hill, you see this little bunker, and there's this person that's kind of like holding their face in their hands and is like in the fetal position. And then there's a dog who looks like a sort of German Shepherd like dog. And as Randolph sees him, she goes, "Hello, Tribune, you snake." And you watch as the dog kind of shifts into a snake and like kind of flattens out on the page before rising, and like she puts its little forked tail or tongue out at you,
Okay.
and then slithers away.
I'm just picturing a 2D snake
Yeah,
slithering.
yeah. And then yeah, exactly. And she kind of just stands over the crying person and next to you for a moment and just kind of is like gazing off as it wriggles away.
Thinking that they won't be able to interact with me, I'm still gonna get close and just see who this person is and maybe try and make physical contact with them.
Okay, so you like, what's that look like?
Are they down on the ground or
They're
Okay,
like they're like on the ground, kind of like in a little C shape, and their hands are like on their face.
I'm going to kneel down, get on my knees, and then put like my hand on their back or shoulder.
They like shudder at first, and then they just start saying over and over again, "Sorry, sorry, this wasn't supposed to be like this. This wasn't supposed to be what happened. It wasn't supposed to be this way."
Do I recognize this person at all?
Give me insider history.
Ooh, I think I'm gonna switch it up and do history. And I'm gonna use my luck roll.
Okay.
To re-roll. Not that much better. I rolled a 13.
13. It's weird. You sort of recognize the voice in a way. Like, you know when you recognize a voice, but you cannot place where you've heard it from?
Mm-hmm.
That's the sensation you have right now.
Randolph, who is this?
There's a silence. Zork, I cannot lie to you. I've always told you that honesty is important. I don't know if you're ready to hear this.
When will I be ready?
God, I do not know. Maybe it's maybe I'm the one that's not ready.
I'm wondering if this is a conversation that I need to have with the real you.
She's like, laughs at this for a moment, and she goes, "I could not. I mean, that's a very tempting offer. For me. I don't know for real me. I mean," and she like reaches to like remove his hands, and as she pulls his hands away and down from his face, there isn't a face there. And she goes,
Oh shit.
"Orrick, forgive me for my weakness." And then you feel yourself being sucked and pushed back out of the book.
Okay. Am I back in front of Rainier with the book?
You're back in front of Rainier with the book, and where one font used to say hello, it now says goodbye, and then dissipates. But one more bubble of hello is still sitting there.
Looking at it, Rainier seemed to have some disdain and worry that I would have interacted with this individual. But I currently have the pen of order with me.
Mm-hmm.
I look up at Rainier.
She's like just still sitting here like this, smiling at you, with her fingers interlocked underneath her chin.
I think I'm ready for the sword now.
Okay. And she extends it to you.
Okay. Orrick will place the pen down and then reach with his other hand, and grasp the hilt.
Are you still holding the pen?
He hasn't fully let go of it yet.
As you reach for the sword, you feel sort of like a shocking, staticky like sensation in both your fingers. both your hands. As though, and she goes, only have one at a time.
Orrick smiles, then looks very serious for a moment. Focuses really hard on his hand holding the pen, lets it go, and then pulls out the sword.
This recording was brought to you by Rock and Roll to Hit in partnership with Oracle DM and Kings Road Productions. Orrick Juana will return in part 2.
Beat that puzzle, bitch.